How does the world's most powerful empire, which once ruled a quarter of humanity, vanish almost overnight? Could the sun truly set on the British Empire? At its zenith, the British Empire spanned continents, oceans, and cultures. Its influence touched every corner of the globe, from the bustling streets of London to the sprawling plains of India, the deserts of Africa, and the islands of the Caribbean. Britain's navy ruled the seas, its merchants controlled trade networks, and its institutions established laws, education systems, and infrastructure that would endure for centuries. For generations, the empire appeared invincible, its reach and power unmatched. Yet beneath this global dominance, cracks were forming that would eventually lead to its unraveling. The foundations of British imperial power were built over centuries. Early colonization in North America, the Caribbean, and parts of Africa laid the groundwork for wealth, trade, and strategic advantage. The East India Company, acting as a quasi-governmental force in India, allowed Britain to extract enormous resources while expanding influence. Trade in spices, textiles, and later opium provided both revenue and leverage in global affairs. Military victories, often brutal and uncompromising, secured territories that would form the backbone of empire. The crown and parliament worked hand in hand with merchants and generals, creating a system of expansion unparalleled in human history. Yet the empire's very success sowed the seeds of decline. Administering such a vast, diverse, and culturally distinct collection of territories required immense resources, bureaucratic efficiency, and political acumen. Economic costs were enormous, particularly during periods of war. Conflicts like the Napoleonic Wars, the Crimean War, and later World War I drained the treasury and destabilized domestic politics. Military victories expanded territory, but sustaining control and meeting the needs of increasingly restive colonial populations became progressively more difficult. Overextension, both geographically and administratively, created vulnerabilities that would later be exploited. The seeds of independence were planted long before the empire's collapse. Ideas of liberty, self-determination, and nationalism spread across colonies, inspired both by Enlightenment philosophy and local grievances. In India, the Sepoy Rebellion of 1857 revealed tensions between British authority and indigenous populations, exposing cultural misunderstandings, economic exploitation, and resentment of foreign rule. Across Africa and the Caribbean, movements for autonomy grew, fueled by the inequities of colonial administration. Even in settler colonies such as Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, calls for self-governance reflected an evolving political consciousness. The British Empire faced the challenge of governing people who increasingly rejected the legitimacy of external control. World Wars I and II accelerated the decline. The empire's participation drained financial and human resources, leaving Britain weakened economically and politically. While the nation emerged victorious, it faced a new global order dominated by the United States and the Soviet Union. The moral authority of imperial rule was increasingly questioned. Colonies demanded independence, often emboldened by promises of freedom during wartime. The horrors of global conflict also reshaped attitudes at home. As Britons grappled with the cost of maintaining empire while facing domestic hardship, India became the symbol of the empire's vulnerability. Nationalist movements led by figures such as Mahatma Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru mobilized millions in a campaign of civil disobedience, nonviolent protests, and political negotiation. Britain's attempts to suppress these movements only heightened international scrutiny and domestic pressure. By 1947, the empire was forced to concede independence to India, signaling a turning point. The loss of the jewel in the crown demonstrated that even the most prized colony could not be retained against the will of its people, setting a precedent for other territories. Economic and political realities hastened decline elsewhere. Maintaining colonies required substantial military expenditure, bureaucratic administration, and infrastructure investment. Post-war Britain faced an economy weakened by debt, reconstruction costs, and declining industrial output. Simultaneously, the rise of nationalist movements in Africa, the Caribbean, and Southeast Asia made continued colonial rule increasingly untenable. Britain, once the unquestioned global hegemon, faced the reality that sustaining empire was no longer feasible. Gradual decolonization became both a necessity and a pragmatic choice. By the 1960s and 1970s, much of the empire had transitioned to independence. African nations, previously under direct British rule, gained sovereignty through negotiation and, in some cases, conflict. Caribbean islands followed suit, and former territories in Asia either achieved independence or entered into Commonwealth. Relationships, Britain's withdrawal was not uniform. Some transitions were peaceful, while others involved negotiation, compromise, or armed struggle. The empire that had once seemed eternal now existed largely as historical memory, its former. Subjects asserting control over their destinies, the cultural, social, and political impact of the empire's loss was profound. Britain grappled with its diminished status, adjusting its economy, foreign policy, and identity in a post-imperial world. And all it took was a single seigneurial world, nation building, and economic development. Globally, the decline of the British Empire marked a shift in power, heralding the rise of new superpowers and altering international relations. The legacy of colonization, both positive and negative, remains visible in language, institutions, and societal structures. Yet the collapse illustrates the impermanence of even the largest empires. Ultimately, Britain's loss of its empire demonstrates that power rooted in control over others is inherently fragile. Military might, wealth, and political sophistication are insufficient when populations reject domination. Economic overextension, cultural resistance, and geopolitical shifts all contributed to decline. The empire's fall was not sudden, but a process unfolding over decades, driven by internal weaknesses, global competition, and the inexorable desire of people for self-determination. History teaches that even empires built on unrivaled power are vulnerable to the forces of change, adaptation, and human aspiration. Even today, the echoes of Britain's imperial past shape global politics, trade, and culture. Former colonies maintain linguistic, legal, and educational links. Yet independence reflects the triumph of local agency over foreign domination. Britain's experience serves as a cautionary tale. Authority without legitimacy, power without responsiveness, and wealth without sustainable structures are doomed to erode over time. The rise and fall of the empire remind us that empires are not immortal, and that human ambition, resilience, and collective will can reshape history. Question for viewers: could any modern superpower maintain global dominance without adapting to the changing desires of nations and peoples? Like, share, and subscribe to the channel for more in-depth historical explorations.